We are, by nature, explorers. The same curiosity that sends us to the stars at the speed of thought urges us to go there in reality. And whenever we make a great new leap, we elevate humanity, bring people and nations together, usher in new discoveries and new technologies. So remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet.
Hello everyone, my name's Wil from Wil Photography and I'm the resident photographer for UK Astronomy, and the topic for today's talk is amazing Aurora on this World Space Week. So I'm very excited to share with you my experience as an Aurora chaser, how you can spot the Aurora, when and where you should go when it indeed does happen, not only in the UK, but this information should hopefully benefit you wherever you are in the world if you want to chase the Northern Lights. So just a quick note on UK Astronomy itself. It's a UK-based charity run by Ross and Frankie Hockham and a host of volunteers. I myself am a volunteer, and although based in Milton Keynes, the idea of UK Astronomy is it's over the UK, so I'll be hoping to help with holding events here in the north of England and beyond. Ross is a firefighter by day and by night, and when it's good weather, I suppose, off he goes stargazing and lots of outreach projects, and it was a very proud moment as he was given a British Citizen Award for his outstanding contribution to education. So here's Ross receiving his award not so long ago. I myself am based in Northumberland. I run Twice Brewed Stargazing, which is Twice Brewed Inn on Hadrian's Wall country, and lots of stargazing events here, so maybe one day I'll see you up here stargazing together. But as I was saying, this is an Aurora talk, so let's just start off by looking at some really cool photographs that I've taken over the years. As I was saying, the Aurora is visible around the UK. This is a photograph that I took in Northumberland a few years ago now. It was actually one of the strongest events that I've seen in recent times, and you know, the structures were very visible, and certainly the colours as well. This was a more recent photograph that I took just at the start of 2021 by Bamborough, northeast coast of England. Really nice, strong display. The Aurora itself is predictable, so a lot of folks will say will mostly find out when there's been a really strong display. The very next day they wake up and it's on the news saying, hey guys, lots of Aurora last night. But actually you can plan it not only days in advance, but in some cases months in advance. This was a trip that I made in 2020, and I really like it because this was planned 3 months before the Aurora arrived. So literally to the day, right on cue, the Aurora turned up that evening. It's a little time lapse showing over the course of about 50 minutes what the skies looked like. And that night was incredible. The greens were very, very visible with the naked eye, and obviously the structure as well, which gets very active, as you can see, for brief moments there. You don't need special cameras to capture Aurora when it's at its best. This was taken with my iPhone in Iceland. Just showing you that you don't need any fancy DSLR mirrorless cameras to capture it when it's very strong. I've been lucky enough to go to Iceland quite a few times, taking groups to Iceland to observe the Northern Lights. Again, this was a completely planned trip specifically for the Aurora, and right on cue, the Northern Lights appeared on the day that we arrived, or the second day we arrived. The Aurora itself does vary in intensity, so most of the time folks may just see it as a little white haze, but on camera all the colours come out. In reality, the best time to go is when the Aurora is strongest. We call these solar storms. And really, as an Aurora chaser, that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the naked eye visible Aurora displays. This photograph was taken in a way which shows you exactly what we saw with our eyes. It hasn't been enhanced in any way. Literally, this is what we saw. And it was even better because it was moving directly above us, swirling around for a good 4 hours. This was my most recent trip a few weeks ago now from this recording in Skogafoss in Iceland, and it just shows you the different types of aurora that can be seen. It's not just that generic green glow on the horizon. And here's a really cool photo that I really like. You can see the spikes coming from the aurora, looking as if it's falling onto the waterfall itself at Skogafoss. Here's a little time lapse that I made in Iceland, and again, it just shows you that the aurora isn't always that strong in Iceland. It definitely does vary in intensity, and this was a day before the main event occurred, so we had a bit of aurora, nothing too exciting, and certainly you'd expect something a lot better than that for Iceland. This was taken in northern Iceland. It's a very quick time lapse, and you can see the aurora just moving all over the place. Very, very beautiful. And I just really like the skies as well, the stars just moving above, and those photobombing the image there. Okay, so let's get into the technical side of it. Let's talk about how you can actually work out when best to see the Northern Lights. Now, it all starts from the sun. It's all about the interaction of solar wind and Earth's atmosphere, funneled by Earth's magnetic field. So the first port of call is to find out and monitor what's going on with the sun. This is an animation taken of the sun showing you the magnetic field lines. And you know, it's important to know that the sun is very active right now, and it certainly will continue to be very active over the next few years by 2024. And the reason why we have this very interesting loops that we can see on the solar surface is actually mainly as a result of something called differential rotation. And that's because the sun is not a solid, it's a gas. So as it rotates on its axis, which it does on average 28 days, every 28 days it rotates once. Actually, different parts of the surface rotate at different speeds. So the equatorial regions rotate faster than the polar regions. It's this twisting motion that causes these entanglements of magnetic field lines, which can also create sunspots, which really is what we're super interested in as aurora chasers. So this is an image of the disk of the sun and obviously some sunspots here. You may have heard of sunspots before, and I guess one of the biggest facts about them is the fact that they are about 2,000 degrees Celsius cooler than the rest of the solar surface. So the sun's surface is on average 6,000 degrees. On sunspots, they're about 4,000 degrees, still very, very hot. But actually what we're interested in is what's going on with these sunspots. And because this talk isn't going to be so long, it's going to be quite a short summarized talk. I'm not going to go into the specific details of why they form and how they form. But all you need to know is, as an aurora chaser, is that a spotty sun is good, because a spotty sun indicates higher activity on the sun, which can lead to things called solar flares. It is from these sunspots that solar flares or coronal mass ejections can occur. And when that happens, the sun throws out billions of tons of material out into all different parts, into space, different areas. And what we're interested in is when that mass is heading directly towards Earth. Because most of the time, solar wind does occur anyway, but what we're interested in is when it's stronger than usual. So this is one of the ways in which it can be stronger, is when these things called solar flares erupt from the sun. Just to give you an idea of these loops on the sun itself, this is the size in comparison to Earth. Absolutely huge. Don't forget, the sun is massive. You could fit 1.3 million Earths in the sun. So, now and again, these flares can leave the sun and head towards Earth. So this is a photograph, a diagram from NASA showing you how what can happen when a flare leaves the sun. We call these coronal mass ejections, and off it goes, heading towards Earth. These solar flares, when they do occur, release energy, and that energy can travel up to about 5 million miles an hour. On average, I would say between 1 to 5 million. And that means that when a solar flare does erupt, we roughly get about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 days notice of when that enhanced solar wind will reach us. So it's great for planning short trips, and it's great because we do get advance notice. So that's what really helps. However, if you wanted to plan, say, a trip to Scandinavia, Iceland, for example, then I'm sure you'll agree 2-3 days notice isn't long enough. So here's where we're interested in these things called coronal holes. Coronal holes are in fact situations where you have the magnetic loop leaving the sun, but they don't come back down again onto the sun's surface itself. It just continues out into space. And this effect means that when a coronal hole is occurring, there's an increased amount of solar matter that comes out into space. And what we want is for these coronal holes to be facing Earth directly, because then that means we have enhanced solar wind, which in turn means we get some very strong aurora, hopefully. This is the secret to how to plan aurora well in advance. Using certain websites and apps, which I'm going to share with you later, you can find out when there's a coronal hole on the sun, and more importantly, when that enhanced solar wind is going to reach us. So what you can do as an aurora chaser is plan 28 days in advance for the next, what we call rotation. Because as I said to you earlier on, the sun rotates every 28 days. So when a coronal hole is facing Earth, and we have this increased enhanced solar wind, and it sparks aurora, you can be pretty sure that in 28 days time, when the sun rotates once, that coronal hole will be facing us again. And there you have your first one rotation, and you're able to predict 28 days in advance of the aurora. There are certain things to note, however. Coronal holes aren't entirely stable. They do change, of course, in size. They sometimes get bigger, but they indeed sometimes disappear completely. However, if you have a very large coronal hole opening up, chances are it will stay for at least one rotation. In some cases, these rotations can continue for six actual cycles. So it means that if you have a very strong, stable coronal hole, you could plan 6 months in advance for any aurora trips. Have you ever wondered why aurora looks different in the night sky, and different displays, different colors? And this is because the energy from the sun is interacting with the atoms in our atmosphere, and depending on how much energy the sun gives and what particular atom it's energizing, we get different colors. This is a photograph of what you'd like to see when all the colors and all the atmosphere has been affected, and obviously the reds and the greens are the oxygen atoms. Here's some really good news. There is a cycle of solar activity, and it's 11 years approximately. And what that means is every 11 years we see peaks of aurora activity, and here now in 2021 we've actually just got out of one of the worst solar minimums in over 100 years. And what that means is over the last 4 years we haven't had many aurora displays to enjoy. NASA confirmed last year that the sun is now waking up and is now moving into a period of activity, and so by 2024 we expect that to be the next peak, and that means over the next 3 years we should hope to see lots more aurora. Okay, so what do you need? Well, we need the right solar conditions. So we've already discussed this. We want either a solar flare to leave the sun, led by sunspots, or coronal holes that are facing towards Earth. Clear skies to the north. This is the most important factor of aurora chasing. More important than aurora itself. Because even if you have the strongest aurora display ever, it's absolutely pointless if you've got cloudy skies. And this is one of the biggest challenges. So using the right types of websites and data, hopefully you can plan, given the fact that we do get notice of when aurora displays will happen, to be at the right place at the right time. Please understand that the weather really is the number one thing to focus on when chasing the northern lights. The absence of light pollution. Once you have found a location which has clear skies, you have to think about where to go for dark skies. Obviously, the darker the skies or the less light pollution you have, the better the enjoyment of seeing the aurora in all its glory. A massive, massive impact. Here's a really good website that I use as a resource. It's spaceweather.com. This is what it looks like. So this is a screen grab from just a few days ago here. And as you can see, all the information's on there about what's going on. So the first title, Geomagnetic Storm Warning. This was a prediction of very strong aurora occurring on the Monday night. In reality, that what we call coronal mass ejection did arrive, but it wasn't until past midnight when it actually came. However, it certainly worked for America. It did arrive for them on October the 11th, not for us on the UK till the early hours of the 12th. The most important thing in this page is also on the left hand side, and that is the disk of the sun showing you any sunspots. When sunspots appear, what we're wanting is for solar flares to erupt from those sunspots. Moving further down the page, on the left hand side still, you can see things like the current auroral oval, and that gives you an indication of the likelihood of seeing aurora wherever you are in the world. Coronal holes further down on the left, this is what I was talking about. This is what you want to keep an eye on to predict aurora 28 days or even 2, 3, 4 months in advance. This is very, very useful information for chasing northern lights long term. KP index. When you go on websites or apps, when it comes to aurora, you'll hear a lot of this index called the KP. And it's an average indicator of how likely it is for you to be able to see aurora in your location and how strong the aurora is. The KP index runs from 0 to 9. A 9 is approximately every 20 years you may have a 9 event. It's quite a rare occurrence. An 8, during the peak years, you probably see that about 2-3 times a year. A KP7, similarly, maybe about 8 to 9 times. A KP6 is more common during cycles of activity, high activity. But I guess it's pretty self-explanatory what's going on here. The higher the number, the lower the latitudes you can see the aurora. Likewise for North America, same thing. The higher the number, the lower the latitude. It's important to note that the aurora oval is interactive with Earth's magnetic field. So it isn't exactly aligned with the true North Pole, and therefore observers in North America will see the aurora in much lower latitudes than we do in Europe because of the lopsided nature of the Earth's magnetic core and field. Here's some apps that I use. This is called Aurora Pro. I think you may have to pay for it, but it's very useful. It gives you that indication of the KP index, where you can see it, best locations, but more importantly, almost real-time forecasts, which is very helpful. This is aided by the fact that there is a satellite positioned 1 million miles towards the sun from Earth, and that receives any solar information first before we do, and that's why these sort of apps are extremely useful to help you predict and for you to decide whether or not it's worth going out to see the aurora in real time. You no longer have to just hope for the best and stay outside for hours and hours. Aurora Watch UK is great for the UK, and it gives you not only how active the aurora is, but also bits of information on the top. For example, right now it's saying aurora is unlikely to be seen. At certain times it'll say things like you can see it with the naked eye, or you can see it by camera. The Glendale app is an extremely useful tool that you can use. It's not an actual app that you download from App Store, for example, but if you go on the website, it'll tell you how you can have it on your phone. But this is by far one of the most accurate resources that you can use as an aurora chaser. I'm not going to be going into the actual technical specs that we can see on the screen right now, but there's certainly a lot more than just looking at KP indexes. Things like the polarity of the magnetic field is a far better indicator of how strong the aurora will be for you. So, as I was saying, the weather is extremely important for predicting the aurora. For you to be able to see the aurora. So, Clear Outside is a very decent app that I use a lot. Home and Dry is also extremely useful. Actually, I use that more than any other app. It gives you real-time information on clouds, for example, and rain clouds. And if you're off to Iceland, video.is is a very useful website. It's the best website I've found for predicting weather in Iceland. Absence of light pollution to the north. You certainly don't want to be seeing views like this when you're chasing the aurora. A supermarket. So just be really aware of places that you're going to. You want to be either on a hill overlooking the northern horizon with no light pollution, or I would recommend, if you can, to the coast where you get the best horizon and no light pollution to the north. A lot of folks always ask me, where is the place to go? These are the places to go when you have no light pollution, but more importantly, clear skies. The Bortle Dark Sky Scale is an extremely useful tool for stargazers and aurora chasers, for example. Lightpollutionmap.info is a website that I highly recommend, and it takes into account this tool called the Bortle Dark Sky Scale, which basically tells you how dark a site is anywhere in the world. It runs from 1 to 9. A 1 is where you have no light pollution whatsoever, and 9 is middle of a major city. Here's a snapshot of what lightpollutionmap.info looks like, and you can use it like Google Maps. You can zoom right in and it'll tell you how much light pollution there is depending on the location that you're wanting to go. Just be super mindful that if you are going to chase the northern lights, you'll be facing north, and not only think about where you are and above you how clear it is, but over the north direction whether or not you've got light pollution there. It's a major impact. Okay, for example, if I'm aurora chasing, I am not only thinking about what's above me, but what is miles north ahead of me. Okay guys, well, I hope that's been extremely useful for you. As I was saying, this is on behalf of UK Astronomy, and I am, of course, in the Facebook group, where you're more than welcome to ask me any questions and, any help whatsoever. My job is to be here for you.